The morning sky above Neo-Sol burned red with smoke and ash. Minji-han pulled her worn jacket tighter as she climbed through the broken concrete and twisted metal that once was her home city. 3 years had passed since the Velthari ships came from the stars and turned Earth into a graveyard. 3 years since humanity learned they were not alone in the universe, and that their new neighbors wanted them dead. She stepped carefully around a crater where the central government building used to stand. The alien weapons had melted the structure into glass and steel soup. Now wild plants grew through the cracks, nature slowly claiming back what was left. But Minji was not here to admire the flowers. Her destination was the old subway tunnel system. During the war, it had served as shelter for thousands of civilians. Now it was home to the last organized human military unit in this part of the world. As she descended the broken escalator, her footsteps echoed in the darkness. "Password," came a voice from the shadows. "New dawn," Minji replied. A young man stepped into view, rifle in hand. It was Junho Park, former engineer for the Seoul Defense Corps. His uniform was patched and dirty, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Colonel Han," he said with relief. "We were getting worried. The scouts reported Veltari patrol ships in Sector 7. Minji nodded. "I saw them. 2 cruisers heading north. They are searching for something." She paused, studying his face. Or someone. They walked deeper into the tunnel system, past sleeping areas carved from maintenance rooms and workshops built in old storage spaces. Children peered at them from behind makeshift barriers. Their parents watched with hollow eyes, the same expression Minji had seen on every human face since the surrender. The main command center was located in what used to be the central control room for the subway system. Maps covered every surface, marked with red zones where aliens patrolled and green areas still under human control. The green areas were getting smaller each month. Sora Kim looked up from a communication console as they entered. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her fingers moved quickly over the controls. Before the war, she had been Earth's most promising young diplomat. Now she monitored alien radio chatter and tried to understand their plans. "What is the situation report?" Minji asked. Sora turned to face her. "Not good. The Veltari are consolidating their control over the eastern territories. They have established 3 new bases in the past week. Also, I intercepted something interesting." She held up a datapad. "They are preparing to host some kind of ceremony next month." "What kind of ceremony?" "From what I can translate, it sounds like a victory celebration. They are inviting representatives from other alien species to come and see their conquest of Earth." Minji felt a cold anger build in her chest. The Veltari were going to parade Earth like a trophy. They wanted to show the galaxy how easily they had crushed humanity. Junho cleared his throat. "Colonel, there is something else. We found something in the wreckage of that Veltari transport that crashed last week." He led them to a sealed room where 3 other survivors worked on alien technology. The crashed transport had been a lucky break. Most Veltari equipment was designed to self-destruct if damaged, but this one had failed to activate its destruction sequence. "Look at this," Junho said, pointing to a sleek panel covered in alien symbols. "It is their navigation system. But, more importantly, it contains star maps and communication codes." Minji studied the device. She could not read the alien writing, but the implications were clear. "This tells us where their bases are." "Not just their bases," Sora added. "According to this data, the Velthari Empire controls over 300 star systems. Earth was just one target in a much larger expansion. How many species have they conquered?" "At least 12 that I can identify from the records. Maybe more." Minji was quiet for a long moment. She walked to the large map on the wall and stared at the red zones marking alien control. Most of Earth was red now. The blue areas representing free human territory were small islands in an ocean of occupation, but something was forming in her mind. A dangerous idea. "Junho," she said finally, "can you make this ship fly again?" He looked surprised. "The transport? Maybe. It will take time, and resources we do not have." "What resources do you need?" "Power cells, replacement parts, fuel." The Velthari use a completely different technology system than ours. Then we get them from the Velthari themselves. Sora looked alarmed. Minji, you cannot be serious. Attack a Velthari base. We barely have enough people to defend this tunnel. I am not talking about a direct attack. Minji turned to face her team. I am talking about something else. Something they will not expect. She pointed to the alien navigation system. This device can get us close to their installations without triggering their sensors. We can study their defenses, learn their patrol patterns, understand their weaknesses. And then what? Then we hit them where they are vulnerable. Not with armies or ships, but with precision strikes. Make them afraid. Make them uncertain. Junho was nodding slowly. Guerrilla warfare. Exactly. The Velthari conquered us because they had superior technology and numbers. But they are occupiers now. Occupiers have different weaknesses than invaders. Over the next several hours, Minji outlined her plan. It was ambitious and dangerous, but it was also possible. Small teams of humans could use captured alien technology to move unseen through their own star system. They could gather intelligence, sabotage key installations, and slowly build a network of resistance cells. It will not be easy, she warned. Many of us will not survive. But if we do nothing, humanity dies anyway. At least this way, we die fighting. The others were silent, considering her words. Finally, Sora spoke. The communication codes in that navigation system, they might let us contact other human settlements. Colonies that were cut off during the war. How many colonies were there? 17 confirmed settlements in other star systems. Maybe more that were not officially registered. Minji felt a spark of hope. If even half of those colonies had survived, that meant there were potentially millions of humans scattered across the galaxy. Humans who might be willing to fight back if they knew they were not alone. Then that is where we start, she said. We repair the transport. We make contact with the colonies. We build a network. And then, Junho asked. Minji looked at the alien device, then at the map of occupied Earth, then at her small team of survivors. Then, we remind the galaxy that humanity is not as weak as they think. 3 weeks later, the salvaged Velthari transport lifted off from a hidden launch site in the ruins of Incheon. Its human crew had spent every waking hour learning to operate alien systems and studying captured enemy intelligence. The ship's exterior bore the proper identification codes and transponder signals of a legitimate Velthari vessel. To any watching sensors, it appeared to be just another routine patrol ship heading to the outer system. No one would guess that. It carried the seeds of what would become the greatest resistance movement in galactic history. Minji Han stood on the bridge of her captured ship and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among those distant points of light were human colonies, alien civilizations, and opportunities she could barely imagine. The Velthari thought they had conquered Earth. They thought humanity was finished. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 5 years had passed since Minji Han first stepped aboard a captured Velthari transport. Those years had changed everything. What started as a desperate plan by a handful of survivors had grown into something the galaxy had never seen before. In the deep asteroid belt beyond Mars, a massive hollowed-out rock drifted silently through space. To any passing ship, it looked like just another piece of debris from the solar system's formation. But inside, thousands of humans worked day and night in a hidden city carved from stone and metal. Minji walked through the main corridor of Haven, base watching the controlled chaos around her. Engineers rushed past carrying alien components. Communications officers monitored dozens of screens showing intelligence from across human space. Children born after the war played in recreation areas speaking a mixture of Korean, English, and 3 different alien languages they had learned from intercepted broadcasts. "Admiral," called a voice behind her. She turned to see Do-Hyun Lee approaching. 5 years of living in space had made him lean and pale, but his eyes burned with the same intensity that drove all of them. He wore the black uniform of the Deep Strike Division, the elite unit that carried out humanity's most dangerous operations. "Report," Minji said as they walked. Operation Silent Thunder was a complete success. We hit 7 Velthari supply convoys in the Centauri sector over the past month. They lost enough equipment to supply a small fleet. Casualties? None on our side. The Velthari never knew what hit them. This was the key to their success. The Terran Resistance Network, as they had come to call themselves, did not fight fair battles. They struck from shadows and vanished before the enemy could respond. They used the aliens' own technology against them, appearing on sensors as legitimate traffic until the moment they attacked. They reached the Central Command Center, where Yuna Choi was bent over a workbench covered with alien devices. Her hair had gone gray in the past 5 years, but her mind was sharper than ever. She had become humanity's leading expert on alien technology, reverse engineering everything from weapons to life support systems. "Show me what you found," Minji said. Yuna held up a small crystal device. "This came from the latest convoy raid. It is a quantum communication relay. Do you know what this means?" "Tell me." "The Velthari use these for instant communication across any distance. No time delay, no signal loss. If I can figure out how to replicate this technology, we can coordinate operations across the entire galaxy in real time." Minji felt her pulse quicken. Communication had always been their biggest challenge. Messages between distant human cells took weeks or months to arrive, but instant communication would change everything. "How long?" "Give me 6 months and a full research team." "You have it." As they spoke, alarm signals began flashing throughout the command center. Sora Kim looked up from her monitoring station with concern. "Admiral, we have a problem. I am picking up massive Velthari fleet movements in 17 different systems. They are repositioning forces on a scale we have never seen before." "Are they preparing for a major offensive?" "I do not think so. The movement patterns are defensive. They are consolidating their most valuable assets and pulling back from outer territories." Minji studied the tactical display. Red dots showed Velthari fleet positions across dozens of star systems. The aliens were clearly responding to something that had them worried. "They are scared," she realized. "Of us?" Do-hyun asked. "Think about it. For 5 years we have been hitting them with attacks they cannot predict or prevent. Their supply lines are constantly disrupted. Their commanders are afraid to travel without massive escorts. They are starting to see ghosts in every shadow." Sora brought up another display. "There is more. I have been monitoring communications between Velthari commanders and their allies. They are requesting additional security forces from other species." "Which species?" "The Cathani Star Empire has already sent 3 battle groups. The Zephyrian Trade Federation is providing escort ships for critical supply runs. Even the Crystalline Hegemony has offered military advisors." This was bigger than Minji had dared hope. Not only were they hurting the Velthari, but they were forcing them to reveal their alliances and dependencies. Every species that came to help the Velthari was a potential target for future operations. "Admiral," called another voice. It was Tae-hyun Yoon, one of their deep cover agents. He had been operating within alien society for 3 years, posing as a human slave who had accepted his fate. His information had been invaluable for planning operations. "What is it, Tae-hyun?" "I just returned from the Velthari Administrative Center on Proxima Station. They are planning something big for next month, a gathering of military commanders from across their empire." "How big?" "Over 100 senior officers, including Supreme Commander Korvash himself. They want to discuss the security situation and plan a coordinated response to our activities." Minji felt a dangerous idea forming. A gathering of that many high-ranking Velthari officers in one place was an opportunity that might never come again. "Where is this meeting taking place?" "Nexus Station in the Altair system. It is their most secure facility outside of their home system." "Security. Massive. 3 fleet groups, orbital defense platforms, and ground-based installations. It would be impossible to attack directly." "I was not thinking about a direct attack." The others looked at her with concern. They had learned to recognize that expression on her face. It meant she was about to propose something that seemed impossible. Over the next 2 hours, Minji outlined her plan. It was bold beyond anything they had attempted before, but the potential payoff was enormous. If they could strike, at the heart of the Velthari command structure, they could cripple their ability to coordinate responses to human attacks. We would need to position assets in 17 different systems simultaneously, Do-hyun pointed out. We have the ships and crews. The timing would have to be perfect. Yuna, how is that quantum communicator coming? The scientist looked up from her workbench. I may have a breakthrough sooner than expected. Give me 2 weeks. You have 1 week. Yuna nodded grimly and turned back to her work. As the team dispersed to begin preparations, Minji remained in the command center, staring at the star charts. What they were planning went far beyond guerrilla warfare. It was a direct challenge to alien supremacy. 3 weeks later, across 17 star systems, human strike teams prepared for simultaneous operations. Each team had been positioned using captured alien ships and forged identification codes. They looked like routine traffic on security sensors, but they carried enough firepower to cripple critical infrastructure. On Nexus Station, the Velthari military conference was entering its second day. Supreme Commander Korvash had just finished explaining new security protocols designed to counter human terrorism when the first explosions began. They did not come from outside the station. They came from within. Human infiltrators, who had been posing as maintenance workers and support staff for months, activated hidden charges throughout the facility. Critical systems failed in cascade failures. Life support fluctuated. Artificial gravity generators overloaded. As alarms screamed throughout the station, reports began flooding in from across Velthari space. Power plants had exploded on Kepler Station. Communication relays were down in the Wolf system. Supply depots were burning on a dozen different worlds. In the span of 30 minutes, the Terran Resistance Network had demonstrated something that shook the foundations of galactic civilization. The humans were not just survivors hiding in the ruins of their homeworld. They were an organized force capable of striking anywhere, anytime with devastating precision. The aliens called it Ghost Night, the night when the dead species came back to haunt the living galaxy. Supreme Commander Korvash, evacuating from his damaged command ship, sent an emergency message to every military installation in Velthari space. The message was simple, but urgent. The humans were no longer a conquered species. They were at war, and they were winning. The Grand Assembly Hall of Kyrian Prime had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 43 different species sat in stunned silence as security forces scrambled to respond to an impossible situation. A human had just walked into the most secure diplomatic facility in the galaxy. Minji Han stood alone at the center of the circular chamber, her black uniform pristine, despite having somehow penetrated 7 layers of security. Around her, alien delegates whispered in dozens of languages, their translators struggling to keep up with the flood of confused chatter. At the highest tier of seating, the Velthari delegation was in complete disarray. General Korvash, supreme, military commander of their empire, stared down at the human woman with a mixture of rage and disbelief. How had a member of a conquered species reached the heart of galactic civilization? The session moderator, a tall crystalline being from the hegemony, finally managed to restore some order. Security breach. This session is suspended until the intruder can be removed. I would not do that if I were you, Minji said calmly. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, translated instantly into every major galactic language. She reached into her jacket and several dozen security officers raised their weapons. But instead of a weapon, she pulled out a small communication device. My name is Admiral Minji Han of the Terran Resistance Network. I have come here today to deliver a message to the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Security, remove this creature immediately, Korvash commanded. I said I would not do that. Minji's voice remained steady. Because in approximately 30 seconds, you are going to want to hear what I have to say. She activated her communicator. Across the galaxy, sleeper agents who had been positioned for months received a simple signal. It was time. The first reports came in over the emergency communication network. Velthari military headquarters on 7 different worlds had gone dark. Critical supply depots were exploding. Defense satellites were falling out of orbit. Within minutes, the chaos spread. Power grids failed on major alien worlds. Communication relays went silent. Transport hubs erupted in flames. The coordinated strikes were happening faster than any defense could respond. The assembly hall filled with panicked voices as delegates received emergency calls from their home governments. Something unprecedented was happening across dozens of star systems simultaneously. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded the crystalline moderator. "This is humanity announcing its return to galactic affairs," Minji replied. "For too long you have treated us as extinct or irrelevant. Today that changes." She gestured to the chaos around the chamber. "What you are witnessing is the result of 5 years of careful preparation. My people have infiltrated your worlds, studied your defenses, and positioned themselves throughout your territory. Today we demonstrate that Earth was not conquered, it was awakened." From the Velthari section, a familiar voice rose in anger. "Impossible. We destroyed your fleets. We occupied your world. You are a broken species clinging to the ruins of a dead planet." Minji looked directly at General Korvash. "You made a fundamental mistake, General. You assumed that because you could defeat our armies and occupy our territory, you had defeated our spirit. You were wrong." She turned to address the entire assembly. "The Velthari invasion taught us valuable lessons. It showed us that the galaxy is a dangerous place where the strong prey upon the weak. But it also showed us something else. It showed us that strength is not just about having the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons." Another wave of emergency reports flooded into the chamber. Alien military installations across the galaxy were reporting coordinated attacks by unknown forces. The strikes were precise, devastating, and clearly planned with detailed knowledge of each target's vulnerabilities. The species represented in this chamber control vast empires built on the subjugation of weaker civilizations. Minji continued. "You divide the galaxy among yourselves and treat smaller species as resources to be exploited. Today, that system begins to crumble." She activated her communicator again. This time, the transmission was broadcast openly to every world in the galaxy. The message was simple but revolutionary. To all species who have suffered under the dominance of the great powers, humanity offers an alternative. We offer alliance based on equality rather than submission. We offer protection for those who cannot protect themselves. We offer a new way forward. The response was immediate. On dozens of worlds, enslaved and subjugated species began to rise against their oppressors. Mining colonies rebelled against their overseers. Trade worlds declared independence from their controlling empires. The message of human defiance spread like wildfire through populations that had long dreamed of freedom. "You are terrorists," Korvash snarled. "Pirates and criminals hiding behind noble words." "We are what you made us," Minji replied. "You invaded our world expecting easy conquest. Instead, you created your worst nightmare. A species with nothing left to lose and the determination to ensure no other civilization suffers as we did." She pulled out another device, this one displaying a holographic star map. Red indicators marked locations across the galaxy where simultaneous operations were underway. 57 military installations, 34 supply depots, 19 communication hubs, 12 administrative centers, all struck simultaneously by forces you never knew existed. The numbers were staggering. The coordination required for such an operation was beyond anything the galaxy had seen. It suggested an intelligence network and military capability that rivaled the major powers. "How many of you are there?" asked a delegate from the insectoid Kalari hives. "Enough," Minji answered. "Humanity may have started with one devastated world, but we are no longer alone. Every species that has been crushed by your empires, every world that has been stripped of resources, every civilization that has been reduced to slavery, they all remember who offered them hope when no one else would." The implications were terrifying for the established powers. If the humans had truly built an alliance network spanning the galaxy, it represented a fundamental threat to the existing order. "What do you want?" the crystalline moderator asked. "Recognition. Representation. Preparations for the unprovoked attack on Earth. And most importantly, a seat at this table as an equal power in galactic affairs. And if we refuse? Minji smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not a pleasant expression. Then what happened today will seem like a gentle introduction to what comes next. We have spent 5 years learning your weaknesses. We know where you are vulnerable. We know which of your allies can be turned. We know which of your subject species are ready to rebel. She looked directly at each major delegation. You can accept us as equals and partners in a new galactic order, or you can face us as the enemy that will tear down everything you have built. The silence that followed was broken only by the continued stream of emergency reports. Across the galaxy. The old certainties were crumbling as humanity announced its return to galactic civilization, not as conquered victims, but as a force that would reshape the stars themselves. 2 months after the revelation at Kirion Prime, Minji Han stood in the observation deck of her flagship, watching the construction of New Geneva Station. The massive orbital facility was being built in neutral space, far from any major powers' territory. It would serve as the diplomatic and military headquarters for humanity's growing alliance. The station buzzed with activity as ships from dozens of different species arrived daily. Former Velthari slave colonies brought mining equipment and raw materials. Rebellious Kithani territories offered advanced medical technology. Even some progressive factions from major powers were secretly sending representatives to explore this new alliance. Admiral called Kyung-ho Nam as he entered the observation deck. Her strategic advisor carried a datapad filled with the latest intelligence reports. We have a problem. Show me. He activated a holographic display showing military movements across the galaxy. The major powers are finally coordinating their response. The Velthari, Crystalline Hegemony, and Kithani Empire have formed a joint task force. They are calling it the Galactic Stability Initiative. Minji studied the formation patterns. 3 massive fleets were converging on strategic positions that would allow them to cut off human supply lines and isolate their allied worlds. They plan to strangle us economically before launching military strikes, she observed. Exactly. If they can prevent trade between our alliance members, many of the smaller species will be forced to abandon us and return to their former allegiances. This was the challenge Minji had expected. Military victory was meaningless without political sustainability. The human alliance needed to prove it could provide long-term security and prosperity, not just dramatic gestures of defiance. Have you heard from Heon? Her diplomatic mission to the Zephyrian Trade Federation concluded successfully. They are willing to provide shipping protection for our merchant vessels, but they want exclusive mining rights to the Kepler asteroid fields in return. Minji nodded. The Zephyrians were pragmatic above all else. They cared less about political ideology than profitable trade relationships. If humanity could offer better economic opportunities than the traditional powers, the Zephyrians would switch sides, and the Petros mining colonies, still under Velthari occupation, but our intelligence suggests the workers are ready to rebel. They just need a signal that we can protect them after they declare independence. The Petros situation was crucial. The mining colonies produced rare elements essential for faster-than-light travel. Whoever controlled them could effectively control galactic commerce. The Velthari knew this, which was why they maintained such heavy military presence in the E system. Tell me about our assets in the region. Kyung-ho brought up a tactical display. We have 3 deep strike teams positioned in nearby systems. Also, Woojin has been training local resistance cells for 6 months. They know the mining facilities better than any outsider. Woojin Kang had become one of Minji's most trusted field commanders. The young officer had a natural talent for guerrilla warfare and an ability to inspire confidence in alien populations who had never worked with humans before. What does he recommend? A coordinated uprising timed with strikes against the Velthari fleet assets. If we can eliminate their orbital defenses, the ground forces will be trapped and isolated. Casualty estimates. High, but acceptable. The mining colonies have been under occupation for 8 years. The workers are willing to accept significant losses for a chance at freedom. This was the kind of decision that kept Minji awake at night. Every victory required sacrifices, and she carried the weight of every life lost in pursuit of humanity's larger goals. A communication alert interrupted her thoughts. Sora Kim appeared on the main display, transmitting from her intelligence post, deep in crystalline hegemony territory. Admiral, I have urgent information. The hegemony is planning to make a direct offer to our alliance members. They want to split our coalition by offering better terms than we can provide. What kind of terms? Full citizenship status in hegemony society, advanced technology transfers, and protection guarantees. They are specifically targeting the more advanced species in our alliance, the ones who joined us for strategic rather than ideological reasons. This was clever politics. The crystalline hegemony was offering immediate benefits rather than engaging in military conflict. Some of humanity's allies might find such an offer attractive, especially if they became convinced that the human alliance could not provide long-term security. Have any species responded? Not yet, but the offer is being seriously considered by at least 6 different governments. Minji turned back to the tactical displays. The galaxy was becoming a complex web of shifting alliances and competing offers. Success would depend not just on military capability, but on humanity's ability to provide something the traditional powers could not match. Kyungho, I want you to analyze something for me. What do all of our alliance members have in common? He considered the question. They were all marginalized or exploited by the major powers. Exactly. We offer them something the hegemony cannot provide, no matter what terms they propose. Which is respect. Genuine partnership instead of benevolent dictatorship. She gestured to the construction activity visible through the observation windows. Look at that station being built. Every species contributed according to their abilities. No one was forced to provide materials or labor. No one was told their contributions were inadequate. This was humanity's strategic advantage. While the major powers could offer superior technology and military protection, they could not offer true equality. Their entire civilization was built on hierarchical relationships between dominant and subordinate species. Admiral, came another voice over the communication system. It was Daewon Lim, commanding the fleet elements protecting the construction site. We have incoming ships, multiple contacts, various configurations, hostile, unknown. They are flying diplomatic flags, but some of those vessel classes have never been seen in neutral space before. Minji made her way to the bridge where the tactical display showed an impressive collection of ships approaching the station. The vessels represented over 20 different species, including some that had never been known to work together. Open, a communication channel. The main screen activated to show a familiar face. It was Tae-hyun-yoon, but he was no longer disguised as a conquered human. Instead, he wore the formal diplomatic robes of an official ambassador. Admiral Han, I bring greetings from the Free Worlds Coalition. We have come to discuss terms for formal alliance membership. Behind him, Minji could see representatives from multiple species all waiting to begin negotiations. The Free Worlds Coalition was a group of mid-level civilizations that had remained neutral in galactic politics for centuries. Their decision to approach the human alliance was a significant development. Welcome, Ambassador Yoon. We are prepared to begin discussions immediately. Over the following weeks, New Geneva Station became the center of intense diplomatic activity. The Free Worlds Coalition brought not only their own resources, but also intelligence about other species considering similar moves. The traditional balance of galactic power was shifting faster than anyone had anticipated. The breakthrough came when news arrived from the Petros system. Wu Jin's operation had succeeded beyond all expectations. The mining colonies were free. The Velthari occupation forces had been neutralized, and most importantly, the operation had been broadcast live across the galaxy. Billions of beings had watched human forces liberate an enslaved population, demonstrating that the Alliance could deliver on its promises of protection and freedom. The psychological impact was enormous. Within days, 12 more species formally requested Alliance membership. The Zephyrian Trade Federation announced they were switching sides entirely. Even some progressive factions within major powers began calling for negotiations with the human coalition. But Minji knew this was only the beginning. The traditional powers would not accept the collapse of their dominance without a fight. The real test was still to come. As she stood once again in the observation deck of her flagship, watching the completion of New Geneva Station, she reflected on how far humanity had come, from the ruins of Earth to the center of galactic politics, in less than a decade. The chess game was far from over, but for the first time since the Velthari invasion, Minji-Han allowed herself to believe that humanity might actually win. The formal declaration came exactly 1 year after the liberation of Petros. The Velthari Empire, Crystalline Hegemony, and Kithani Star Empire announced the formation of the Imperial Alliance, dedicated to preserving galactic stability against human terrorism and alien manipulation. Within hours, the first shots were fired. Minji-Han stood in the war room of New Geneva Station, watching as red warning indicators appeared across the tactical display. Simultaneous attacks were being launched against human alliance worlds in over 30 different star systems. "Status report," she called out. Seokmin Cho, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, coordinated the defensive response from his position at the Central Command Console. "They hit us hard and fast. Colony worlds, supply depots, communication relays. This is not a probe or limited strike. This is total war. Casualties still coming in, but early estimates suggest we lost at least a dozen installations in the first wave." Minji studied the attack patterns. The Imperial Alliance had learned from their previous encounters with human forces. Instead of predictable military targets, they were striking at the economic and social infrastructure that held the Alliance together. "They want to break our coalition by making membership too costly," she observed. "It might work," admitted Kyung-ho Nam from his strategic planning station. "Some of our newer allies are already requesting evacuation assistance for their core worlds." This was the critical moment Minji had been preparing for since the first day she crawled out of the ruins of Neo Sol. Everything humanity had built over the past decade would be tested in the crucible of total galactic war. "Send a message to all Alliance members," she commanded. "Any world that wishes to withdraw from our coalition is free to do so. No penalties, no recriminations. But those who choose to stand with us will find that humanity knows how to protect its friends." "Admiral," interrupted Min Seo-jong from the Ground Forces Coordination Center. "We are receiving surrender demands from Imperial Alliance commanders. They are offering clemency to any species that abandons the human alliance within 72 hours. How many are considering it?" "At least 8 worlds have requested emergency council sessions to debate withdrawal." Minji felt the familiar, cold determination that had carried her through years of impossible challenges. The enemy was trying to win through intimidation and fear. It was time to remind the galaxy what human beings were capable of when pushed to their limits. "Seokmin, what is our fleet status?" "We have 47 major warships operational, plus approximately 200 smaller vessels. The Imperial Alliance has deployed at least 300 ships of the line, not counting support craft. They outnumber us 7-1. In ship. Count, yes. But remember, Admiral, we have advantages they do not." This was true. Human forces had spent years perfecting unconventional warfare tactics. Their ships were designed for speed and stealth rather than massive firepower. More importantly, their crews fought with a desperation and creativity that traditional military forces could not match. "What do you recommend?" "We avoid direct fleet engagements and focus on what we do best. Hit their supply lines, disrupt their communications, force them to spread their forces thin trying to defend everything at once. And if they ignore our harassment and push directly for our core worlds, then we make them pay such a high price that even victory becomes defeat." Over the following months, the greatest war in galactic history unfolded across hundreds of star systems. The Imperial Alliance possessed superior numbers and technology, but the human coalition fought with tactical innovations that consistently surprised their enemies. Human ships appeared and vanished like ghosts, striking at the most unexpected times and places. They used gravitational anomalies as weapons, turning stellar phenomena into tactical advantages. They coordinated attacks across impossible distances, somehow maintaining communication even when their enemies controlled all known relay networks. The Turning point came at the Battle of the Trinary Nebula. Imperial Alliance forces had cornered a significant portion of the human fleet in a region of space where 3 dying stars created a maze of dangerous energy fields and gravitational distortions. "They have us trapped," reported Seokmin from the bridge of his flagship. "Imperial fleet elements are positioned at all 3 exit points from the nebula. If we try to break out, they will destroy us in detail. Can we fight our way through?" "Not against those numbers. We would need to defeat at least 100 enemy ships with less than 30 of our own." Minji studied the tactical situation from her command ship. The nebula was indeed a trap, but it was also an opportunity for someone willing to take extraordinary risks. "What if we do not try to escape?" "Admiral, the Imperial Alliance thinks they have us cornered. They are positioning their fleets for a coordinated assault. But what if instead of running, we turn the nebula itself into a weapon?" She activated the stellar cartography display. "These 3 stars are all in the final stages of collapse. Their gravitational fields are creating massive tidal stresses throughout this entire region of space. Yes, which is why no sane commander would choose to fight here. Exactly. Which is why they will not expect what we are about to do." Over the next 6 hours, Minji coordinated the most audacious naval maneuver in military history. Instead of fleeing the nebula, human ships moved deeper into the chaotic energy fields. They positioned themselves at precisely calculated points where gravitational forces from the 3 dying stars created temporary stability. When the Imperial Alliance fleet entered the nebula to finish off the trapped human forces, they found themselves flying into a carefully prepared ambush. Human ships emerged from energy clouds that masked their sensors, striking at close range before vanishing back into the stellar chaos. But the real masterstroke came when Minji ordered her ships to destabilize one of the collapsing stars. A concentrated bombardment of its outer layers triggered a premature stellar explosion that sent shockwaves throughout the entire nebula system. The Imperial Alliance fleet, positioned for a conventional battle, was caught completely unprepared for the resulting energy storm. Ships designed for deep space combat were torn apart by gravitational shears and radiation bursts. Those that survived the initial chaos found themselves scattered and disorganized. Meanwhile, human ships rode the shockwaves like surfers on an ocean wave, using their superior maneuverability to escape the nebula while their enemies struggled to maintain formation. When the energy storm finally subsided, 2/3 of the Imperial Alliance fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The survivors limped back to their bases carrying news of an impossible defeat. "How?" demanded General Korvash when the battle reports reached Veltari High Command. "How did humans turn a stellar phenomenon into a tactical weapon?" His aide consulted the analysis reports. "Our scientists believe they had been studying the nebula for months, calculating exactly how to trigger the stellar collapse. The precision required suggests mathematical abilities we have never seen from any species. They sacrificed their own safety to destroy our fleet." "Yes, sir. Several human ships were lost in the energy storm, but their commanders seemed willing to accept those losses in exchange for eliminating our tactical advantage." This was what the Imperial Alliance could not understand about human warfare. Traditional galactic civilization fought according to established rules and conventions. Battles were formal affairs with predictable outcomes based on numerical and technological superiority. But humans fought as if every battle might be their last. They took risks that other species considered insane and made sacrifices that seemed illogical to military minds trained in conventional warfare. News of the Trinary Nebula victory spread across the galaxy within days. Species that had been wavering in their support for the human alliance suddenly found their courage restored. Worlds that had been preparing to surrender instead began preparing for resistance. More importantly, the Imperial Alliance began to fracture. The Kithani Empire, having lost a significant portion of their fleet in the Nebula disaster, opened secret negotiations with human diplomats. They were no longer certain that traditional galactic civilization could defeat this strange, new enemy. As the war entered its second year, Minji realized that military victory was becoming possible. The Imperial Alliance was weakening while the human coalition grew stronger with each passing month. But the greatest test still lay ahead. To truly secure humanity's place in galactic civilization, they would need to strike at the heart of their enemy's power. The time had come to carry the war to the Velthari home system itself. 10 years had passed since Admiral Minji Han first walked into the Grand Assembly Hall of Kyrian Prime. Now she stood in the same chamber, but everything else had changed. The old galactic order had crumbled, and in its place rose something unprecedented. In the history of known civilization, the Terran Commonwealth encompassed over 400 worlds and 43 different species. Earth itself had been rebuilt as a gleaming capital where alien children played in parks alongside human families. The blue planet that had once been marked for extinction now served as the beating heart of galactic democracy. The Council recognizes the ambassador from the Zephyrian Federation, Minji announced from the speaker's podium. She had accepted the role of Commonwealth Chancellor reluctantly, preferring her military duties to political ceremonies. But the various member species insisted that the woman who had liberated half the galaxy should lead the government she had created. The Zephyrian representative, a crystalline being whose body reflected the chamber's lights in beautiful patterns, rose to address the assembly. The Federation wishes to propose new trade agreements with the mining collectives of the former Velthari territories. This was the kind of mundane political business that consumed most of Minji's time now. Trade disputes, territorial negotiations, cultural exchange programs. The daily work of maintaining a peaceful civilization was far more complex than winning a war had ever been. "The motion is acknowledged," she replied. "We will schedule formal hearings for next week." After the session ended, Minji retreated to her private office overlooking New Geneva City. The view showed her a bustling metropolis where dozens of different architectural styles reflected the diverse species that now called Earth home. But despite the beauty of what they had built, she carried a constant weight of unresolved challenges. A soft chime announced a visitor. Yuna Choi entered, looking older but still carrying the same energy that had driven her scientific research through years of war and reconstruction. "How did the Commonwealth Council session proceed?" she asked. 3 trade disputes, 2 territorial claims, and 1 formal complaint about cultural contamination from human entertainment broadcasts. The price of success. Minji nodded wearily. "Sometimes I think the war was easier. At least then we knew who our enemies were." "You have enemies now." This was the conversation Minji had been dreading. For months, intelligence reports had been arriving about growing opposition to Commonwealth policies, not from external threats but from within humanity itself. "Tell me about General Hyunwoo. He has been building support among military commanders who believe we should be ruling the galaxy rather than sharing it. His faction calls themselves the Terran Supremacy Movement." "How much support?" "At least 30% of our active military officers, maybe more. They argue that we fought for human dominance, not alien cooperation." This represented Minji's greatest failure as a leader. In fighting to free humanity from oppression, she had created humans who wanted to become oppressors themselves. The victory over the Imperial Alliance had convinced some people that humans were naturally superior to other species. And the other faction? Dr. Nayoung continues to advocate for complete demilitarization. Her peace coalition wants to dissolve the Commonwealth Defense Forces entirely and rely on diplomatic solutions for all conflicts. That would leave us defenseless against external threats, which is exactly what General Hyunwoo keeps pointing out in his recruitment speeches. Minji walked to the window, watching the mixed crowds of humans and aliens moving through the city below. Everything they had built could be torn apart by internal conflict if she could not find a way to unite the competing factions within human society. "Admiral," came an urgent voice over the communication system. It was Siakman, calling from the Commonwealth Defense Command Center. "We have a situation developing at the galactic rim. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures moving toward inhabited space." "What kind of energy signatures?" "Unknown configuration. The scale suggests artificial construction, but the technology is completely unfamiliar." Minji felt a cold chill run down her spine. For 10 years, the Commonwealth had been dealing with known threats and familiar technologies. Something truly alien approaching from beyond the galactic rim represented dangers they were not prepared to face. How long until they reach inhabited worlds? At current velocity, approximately 6 months. Alert all member worlds. Begin immediate defensive preparations. Within hours, the news had spread throughout Commonwealth space. The mysterious signals from beyond the galaxy triggered panic on some worlds and excited scientific curiosity on others. But it also had an unexpected unifying effect on human society. General Hyunwoo and Dr. Na-young both requested emergency meetings with the Chancellor. For the first time since the Commonwealth's formation, the competing human factions were willing to work together against a common threat. Chancellor, Hyunwoo said as he entered her office, whatever our political differences, humanity must be prepared to defend itself and its allies. I agree, added Na-young, but we must also consider that these newcomers might not be hostile. Our first approach should be diplomatic. Diplomatic contact with beings whose technology we cannot understand and whose intentions we cannot predict. Better than assuming they are enemies and starting another galactic war. Minji listened to their arguments with growing concern. Even faced with external danger, her people could not agree on how to respond. The divisions within human society ran deeper than she had realized. The crisis deepened when the first direct contact occurred. A massive artificial construct, larger than anything ever built by known galactic civilizations, entered the outer regions of Commonwealth space. It ignored all communication attempts and began systematically harvesting stellar energy from uninhabited star systems. It is not responding to any of our signals, reported Sora from the Commonwealth Communications Center. We have tried every known language and mathematical sequence. Either they cannot understand us, or they are choosing to ignore us. What about their harvest operations? They appear to be collecting raw energy and converting it into some kind of exotic matter. Our scientists have never seen anything like the process they are using. More constructs appeared over the following weeks. Each was unique in design but similar in purpose, methodically harvesting resources from empty systems while ignoring inhabited worlds. The pattern suggested intelligence and planning, but with goals that remained completely mysterious. The breakthrough came when Yuna made a discovery that changed everything. Chancellor, I believe I understand what we are facing. These are not invaders in any sense we recognize. They are harvesters. Harvesters of what? Life energy itself. According to my analysis, they are collecting the background radiation that all living worlds produce. They are literally feeding on the existence of biological civilization. The implications were terrifying. If the harvesters continued their expansion, they would eventually consume all energy that supported organic life in the galaxy. Every world, every species, every living thing would slowly die as their fundamental life force was drained away. How long do we have? At their current rate of expansion, they will begin affecting inhabited systems within 2 years. Once they establish harvesting operations in populated regions, all biological life will have perhaps a decade before complete extinction. This was worse than anything humanity had faced before. The Velthari had wanted to conquer and rule. These harvesters wanted something more fundamental, something that could not be negotiated or compromised. The final confrontation came when Minji made the decision that would define her legacy. Taking personal command of the Commonwealth's most advanced warship, she led a desperate assault against the Harvester's central control construct. All ships. This is Chancellor Han. Today we fight not just for the Commonwealth, but for the continuation of organic life in this galaxy. If we fail, everything we have built, everything our ancestors dreamed of, will be consumed by machines that know nothing of hope or love or sacrifice. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Human ships fought alongside former enemies, using every tactical innovation developed over years of warfare. The harvesters responded with weapons that manipulated space and time itself, creating zones where the laws of physics seemed to break down. In the final moments, as her flagship approached the harvester control node, Minji made the ultimate choice. She overloaded her ship's power core, creating an explosion that tore through dimensions and destroyed the construct that coordinated all harvester operations. The sacrifice worked. Deprived of central control, the remaining harvesters shut down or drifted away into deep space. The galaxy was saved, but at the cost of the woman who had shaped its destiny. At her memorial service, representatives from every known species gathered to honor the human who had twice saved galactic civilization. General Hyunwoo and Dr. Nayung stood side by side, their political differences forgotten in the face of shared grief and gratitude. She came from one small world, spoke the crystalline hegemony ambassador, but she carried within her the dreams of every world she touched. That is humanity's gift to the galaxy, not the weapons they build or the battles they win, but the hope they kindle in others.